If your dynasty team sucks, you need to get better at trading. And that's exactly what we're going to be covering today. Welcome to Winning Dynasty. My name is Dan, and on this channel, we're talking dynasty fantasy football, strategies, insights, ways to get better so that you can win your dynasty leagues. It's such a big part of being an effective dynasty league manager is understanding how to trade effectively. And I think a lot of owners just don't quite get it. It's a little bit different than redraft, how trading works there, because in redraft, you're just trading for the year. You're trying to get better for this season, and that's the focus of the trades. In Dynasty, there's a lot more nuances to it, depending on where your team is at. And so we're going to talk about that today, as well as just some general principles for how you can be getting more trades done in a way that helps improve your team and is good for, the league in general. This will actually be the first video in kind of a 4-part series about trading in Dynasty. So make sure you subscribe, like, and click the notifications button so that you get the next video when it comes out next week. Trading is really the lifeblood of a Dynasty league because the waiver wire is usually pretty thin. Most Dynasty leagues have, big, deep rosters, and there's a bunch of owners, and so there's really not a whole lot going on the waiver wire. You have the rookie drafts. Those are super important as well. But if you're not trading, you're really just relying on really strong rookie drafts to build your team to win a championship, and that can be really tough. So the first thing that is super important if you want to be a more effective trader in Dynasty is knowing your league. And that can mean a lot of different things. First, it can literally mean the settings. Understand the settings of your league. Is it Superflex? Are you able to start 2 quarterbacks? If that's the case, then it adds a little bit of value to quarterbacks when you're trading. Is it tight end premium, or do you have to start 2 tight ends? That adds a little bit of value to tight ends. Understand, whether or not you have roster limits. Maybe you can only roster a certain number of players at a certain position, or maybe you have only a certain number of IR spots. Depending on how that all shakes out in your league and how your league is set up, it's going to change how you approach trading. So make sure you're very aware of those settings. Another thing that's important is understanding how rookie draft picks are selected. Leagues do it all kinds of different ways. Some do it based off of just reverse order of standings. Some there's the losers bracket. Some do max points for, which if that is the case, that really matters what your team looks like, what your bench looks like, and how you are trading throughout the year. Knowing your league also means knowing your league mates. Try to understand who they are and what they like. If you're if they're friends, if it's a league with your buddies, this gets a little bit easier because you kind of know them just from your past history. But if you don't, if it's a league with some strangers that you just it's a group that you just found online in a Discord channel or something where you just formed a league and you don't know them as well, the best way to get to know them is by sending out trade offers and trying to understand them a little bit more. Some people are just naturally going to value and appreciate having those rookie picks more than players. And so you have to know that. If you know that person loves the rookie picks, understand that, hey, you might be able to actually get some good players off their roster by offering them rookie picks because they're going to take a lesser rookie pick than the average person would. Or vice versa. There's some people that just don't even care about rookie picks. They're like, take them. I don't care. I don't need them. And so they're the ones that are, hey, you might be able to trade some of your assets away and get a lot of value with rookie picks that you can use down the road. Even as simple as just knowing who in your league roots for what team can matter. And sometimes it can matter, in both ways. Some teams love to go after, their favorite team's star players because they love to be able to root for their team and that team's quarterback or running back or wide receiver. Some people are actually the opposite. So you kind of have to know, like, hey, I have my team that I root for. I actually don't like having players on that team because, it makes me nervous, or I like to be able to kind of hedge my bets of, wanting to not have to root for my own players for fantasy reasons and just focus on rooting for them as a team. Everyone's different. So some people are like that. Some people want their players from their teams. You got to know that. And that's important for when you approach trading. Because as much as, in trading, we'll try to quantify things, value of trying to understand what you're looking for, positions, and it's, numerical. Ultimately, it's emotional. It's an emotional thing that people are making. No one knows for sure who's the better player, what's going to happen. Injuries happen. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen, which makes fantasy football really fun. But ultimately, it's an emotional decision for an owner to say, hey, yeah, I'm willing to give up these players. I'm trying to get these players or these picks. And so understanding who each person in your league is really important. Second thing that's actually really important to being a better trader in Dynasty fantasy football is to stop lowballing your league mates with really, crappy first offers. Yes, we all want to win the trade. We all want to ultimately get more value than we are giving. But for most of your league mates, they're going to be smart. They understand the value and they kind of know what you're offering them. And if you get the reputation of being the person that makes really crappy offers, people aren't going to be interested. Especially if you're the one that brings the offer to the table, now it's up to them. Do they just ignore you, or do they try to negotiate? But if they feel like it's too far of a distance, how much can they negotiate? And all of a sudden it's like, I don't really want to trade with that person. And it creates a little bit of that reputation. And so you have to be somewhat realistic and think towards the future when you are making a offer for a trade. Now, you don't have to necessarily make your best offer first. That's probably not a smart idea either. But maybe, cut back, 10%, 20% of kind of what the max that you'd be willing to go. Don't make a 50% offer of, the amount that you'd be willing to give up for the player that you're targeting, or the players or picks that you're targeting. Knock a little bit off. And then, if they accept it, hey, great, you got a good deal. You didn't really lowball them. You would have taken a little bit more, but it wasn't like you completely ripped them off, and you got the deal done. If not, they might come back and say, hey, actually, I want a little bit more. And hey, at least you didn't start with your best offer. And so now you have a chance to, kind of even things out and go for what you would realistically pay for that player in that trade. But if you start too low, you might just never even get to that point where it's fair. And then you get that reputation, like I said. And if you're on the other end of that, you're getting the lowball offer, just try to be respectful. Let them know, hey, not interested. Really don't want to trade that player. I feel like we're really far off in the valuation, and so I don't think this is going to work out. Certainly, you can make a counter offer. Don't do the same as they just did and make a counter offer that's so extreme in the opposite direction, because that's just not going to get anywhere. It's not going to be productive. It's a waste of time. They're probably not going to want to trade with you again in the future, and you're not going to want to trade with them. And that just hurts the success of the league and the enjoyment of the league, because you have people that aren't trading with each other. And so if you're the one that gets the low ball offer, just be respectful, respond back, and just, figure out where you guys can either meet or just decide, hey, we're going to, pass on this trade for now, and let's revisit another trade, down the road. The third thing is you have to give a little bit to get a little bit. And so trading is interesting because, especially in Dynasty, you're looking at the future as well. And so, someone might win a trade in year 1, but then years 2 and 3, the other person, it flip-flops and they actually ended up winning that trade for years 2 and 3. Does it mean ultimately someone won or lost the trade? No, it depends on what you need. And so we're going to do a deeper dive into understanding your team, your roster, evaluating and figuring out what you need to make the right trades to help your team really improve and progress forward, because it's going to be different for everyone depending on what their roster makeup is and kind of where they're at. But understand that. So you need to know, hey, if I'm, trying to contend this year, I have a real shot at winning. You're going to, want to, you have to be willing to give away some of your rookie picks or some of your younger players, even though you might like them. I really like this young guy. I really like these, I'm really excited about the next rookie draft and I want to hold on to these rookie picks. You're going to have to give a little bit if you want to get that player that's going to help you win the championship. And vice versa. If you're, a team that's really struggling and you need to rebuild, you need to get some of those draft picks, you need to get some younger players that are going to help you. You might need to give up that aging running back that you really like, but they're 28, 29 years old, and they're going to be hitting that age cliff real soon and no longer be valuable to you. You got to recognize that and realize that, hey, they might be good for the rest of the year or for the next year after that, but you have to give a little bit to get what you really need as a team. And so, like I said, we'll dive into more into understanding what that looks like in a future video. But remember that you need to give a little bit to get a little bit. Fourth thing, use tools, but don't worship them and make them the ultimate. This is how everything goes, because tools like Keep Trade Cut are fantastic for understanding what the general Dynasty community consensus is about players or picks and what the value is. But that doesn't really matter, because you're in your league. You're not in some giant league that takes the average of everyone's beliefs or valuations. Your league is the one that you're trading in, and so you need to understand your league. So use those tools. I think it's great to know kind of, are you in the ballpark at least? If you're making an offer, you're about to make an offer, throw it in a trade calculator and see, are we somewhat close? Is it going to be so drastically different that you're like, oh, this actually might look bad for me if I send this because I'm lowballing them, or I actually probably should be asking for a little bit more, because they're probably going to accept this, and I actually feel like I'm not getting enough in this deal, because I learned that from the trade calculator. Now, those calculators use the hundreds and thousands of points. if the trade's off by 500 or 1,000 or 1,500 even, like depending on how big the trade is, it's fine. Don't feel like, oh man, this is such a lopsided trade, I can't do this. Or even if it's like super close, recognize that, hey, this seems good on paper, but are they going to be willing to accept this trade based on what I know about this person and their team needs and that kind of thing. So use those tools as kind of like almost like a tiebreaker, but not the main driver of how you value players and how you expect everyone in your league to value them. Really understand what positions are more scarce in your league, depending on your league settings or just who's on rosters, what the waivers look like. If there's a certain position, you're like, hey, no one can ever get a good running back on waivers. They're always gone. There's never anyone that pops up each week that has some value. And so running backs are going to be a little bit more valuable, where maybe, wide receivers, hey, there's always like a random third or fourth string wide receiver that, might get 3 or 4 catches for 40 yards in a given game. And so I can get a few points here and there off waivers. And so trading your own third string, wide receiver might not get much value because someone will see, hey, I could probably get that off waivers, versus that third string running back that maybe there aren't even any of those on waivers might have more value. So you have to kind of know like what's more valuable in your league, because that might not be reflected in a tool like a, keep trade calculator. The fifth thing that's super important for being a better trader in Dynasty Fantasy Football is being not afraid to lose a trade. I think some people will look at a trade and you can look through all the positives and negatives. How could I win this? How could I lose this? What could go well? What could, not go well? But ultimately, just, think about what your team needs. And again, we're going to dive, this is the first part of a series of 4 videos. We're going to dive into more detail about that, but not be too afraid of, hey, I'm trading away this player. What if they end up going off? What if they end up being really good? You're going to have those worries, and sometimes it might happen. You might lose a trade. But look at the general process of, hey, I'm getting what I need depending on what my team needs are, and so this is going to be a good trade for me, and you got to go after it. You're going to make some bad trades. You're not going to win all the trades, and like I said before, you might lose a trade in year 1 and be like, wow, that was super lopsided. Like my player did terrible, and like the ones I gave away, they did awesome. But you never know. Year 2, year 3, injuries happen, trades happen, all kinds of things happen, and so you might make a trade 1 year, and then 3 years later, the player that you acquired that's done nothing for you, that's been sitting on your bench, all of a sudden they get the opportunity, and hey, now maybe I kind of won that trade. You won't really know. So you have to be okay being afraid to potentially lose trades, again, maybe in the short term, by trusting your process, trusting your instincts, and going after what you need. So this was kind of more of a foundational video, just kind of going through a few key aspects of trading in Dynasty. I'm going to have a few more videos coming out over the next few weeks, diving in a little bit deeper to some more advanced strategies and things that you can be doing to really assess your team and understand what your needs are, and just make better trades and do things that are going to help progress your Dynasty team forward towards winning that championship. Like I said, this will be a 4-part series about trading in Dynasty, so make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notifications button so that you get the notification next video that comes out next week. Also, if you love this Dynasty content and you're into some Dynasty specific waiver wire stuff and transactions and stats and analytics, I'll link my Substack down below, where I'm posting 4 to 6 times a week on different stuff related to Dynasty Fantasy Football, so you can check that out. Talk to you next week.